What if I told you you're looking at the new meta armor set in Elden Ring, at least as far as damage goes? Ladies, gentlemen, and tarnished of all ages, Shadow of the Erdtree is chock full of things to collect, and aside from weapons, most people's favorite things to find are new armor. Both because, fashion is life, and looking sick while you carve through bosses in these games is equally as important as the ability to carve through them in the first place, but also because in Elden Ring, and even more so especially in the DLC, a surprising amount of the armor actually boosts different damage types or different things and gives you special effects that can be used to either just make you offensively stronger on top of the defensive benefit of armor, or just interesting utility that you cannot get elsewhere. That said, today we're going to dive into both of these types of things with a collection of different armor that all gives you character power boosts in some way, with some being genuinely some of the best armor in the game now, and all of it looking great for its own aesthetic's sake at least. I will not be limiting myself on spoilers within this specific collection, outside of anything that requires remembrance bosses to see, so you won't see anything like that. So all these are available actually as early as you want, really, but I will talk about them in a sort of progression order of how early you are likely to find the area that they can be found within. First up then, let's talk probably the most aesthetically divisive item on the list today, the greatjar helmet. This, visually speaking, is literally just a much larger version of the jar helmet, and as someone who loves silly helmets, this thing is amazing. But wait, it gets better, because this actually increases the damage done by any throwing pot item that you use, including the new hefty pots that do tons of bonus damage to the furnace golems, and it increases the damage that they do by around 16% from some brief testing, which is actually a relatively noticeably high amount. Even better though than that, before you all yell at me that the effect isn't worth looking this silly to you, what if I told you that this is the new best defensively statted helmet in the entire game? It weighs as much as the pumpkin helm, tied for heaviest in the game with that, just slightly above the bull goat helmet, which is actually considered the best defensive helmet before the DLC, but the greatjar actually has better defensive stats than both of those helmets, with simply the most damage negation possible in just a helmet in the game, as long as, you're willing to spend 12.3 of your equip load on it and, wear a giant jar around on your head. To get this one for yourself then, you need to go to the Bellarat Jail, which is accessed from the little lake to the east of Bellarat Tower along the cliff wall, and once inside, I'll just show you the full path to the helmet from the Site of Grace. second then today is the Fire Knight armor set, and this is extremely special. Visually it is quite nice, though personally I do prefer the altered chest piece version with the cape removed from it, but it does of course also have some extra character power boosting, which actually is two effects tied to different parts of it. The Fire Knight helmet is essentially a mini Erdtree talisman in your head slot, giving you 2% bonus maximum health, 4% bonus maximum stamina, and 4% bonus maximum equip load, while having no actual negatives to actually disincentivize you from using it, which means if you just care about effectiveness and your build doesn't have a specific helmet that helps, this is just an extremely solid choice for you now, and that just applies to the vast majority of builds in the game. The chest piece then also has its own bonus, and it boosts the power of Messmer incantations by 5%, which is pretty solid for a single piece of armor. And it's worth noting that the altered version of this chest piece does not get the bonus, so you do have to use the cape if you want the bonus. The arms and legs don't have any sort of effect, but they do match the set aesthetically and look cool in their own right too. To get this set then, it is simply a set of RNG drops from any of the Fire Knight enemies that are wearing it. The easiest one to properly farm being right near the storehouse first floor site of grace in the Shadow Keep. From this grace, head back down the elevator away from the grace, apply any buffs that you need on the way down, send the elevator back up while you are getting off of it, and then kill the Fire Knight. You start behind them so you can even sneak up for a backstab if you want, and then teleport to the site of grace and repeat this until you have all the drops that you're after. It will take a while to get the full set if that's what you're after, you know, unless you're lucky. It took me nearly an hour, even with the silver scarab talisman boosting my item discovery, so it's not an easy one. Third up then is the iron rivet armor, but not really the armor itself so much as the helmet that matches it, the pelt of rava. These things technically drop in separate locations, they aren't technically part of the same set, and there is a different helmet that is part of the iron rivet set, but it is clearly intended visually to go with the bear pelt helmet that I want to show you here, so I'll show you the whole thing together and where to get both of the things. But the helmet itself does have a special effect, and that it boosts bear communion incantation damage by right around 15%, as you can see with the bear roar, the only bear incantation. Unfortunately, even with a whole lot of everything to put on here to actually affect the bear roar and try and make it stronger, it's still sort of pitiful as far as the actual damage it does, no matter how much I try, but this is still an extremely cool looking armor set that does have a bonus power, so let's talk about where you can get it. The pelt itself is a drop from a field boss that roams right around here on your map in the middle of the Scadutree region in this little pond. It's actually very simple to get to, there's nothing complicated. If you know where it is on your map, you should be able to get there very simply. Then the rest of the set, the iron rivet armor, comes from the boss of the northern nameless mausoleum. To make it relatively simple, I'll even just show you how to get there the whole way from the Moorth Runes site of grace in Scadutree, and I'll just let this whole path play out. Then today we have the Rakshasha armor set, which is honestly one of the coolest looking plate sets in the game. Ruffled feathers almost as an aesthetic coming out of the plate, basically blood covering the set completely, and it has probably the most universally potent armor effect in the game, which is that each armor piece of this that you wear raises your damage. Period. It works in somewhat unusual ways. For example, it does increase the damage of a pure lightning spear by about 7% for wearing the full set, but increases the damage of a weapon that does both physical and fire damage by around 12%, which implies that it is doing something funky with resistance, penetration, rather than just pure damage itself. But either way, it is just a genuine damage boosting armor set. The trade-off the armor claims to have is that you take more damage while wearing it, but what that actually means is that the set itself just has relatively poor damage negation stats for its weight class. It has the weight of the Knight's Cavalry armor set, but each piece is just far less defensive than that, being much closer to a low to mid-range weight armor set as far as its negation stats. That said, because of this, if you know how to stack damage negation outside of your armor anyways, the loss of tankiness from this can be absolutely minor compared to the just pure all builds damage increase that it gives you. To get this one for yourself then, it comes as a full set from the Eastern Nameless Mausoleum, and to get here you need to get to the Recluse's River, downstream Site of Grace. The path to get here, if you haven't been yet, is quite lengthy, but we do have a video on this channel already about how to get to every area on the map if you don't have this area unlocked yet. That said, from this grace, it is simply a short hop down the gravestones of parkour to the runoff of waterfall. Then you want to hug the cliff wall that is on your right side, and as you work your way around the bend, you will eventually see the mausoleum coming up in front of you, and inside of this is, of course, a boss. Kill the boss, get the armor, and you get their weapon too. Fifth and lastly today, let's talk about the Death Knight armor set. This is again one of the cooler looking armor sets in the entire game in my opinion. It isn't crazy high weight for its visuals either, being a sort of medium weight armor set that looks much heavier, and it has an exceptionally useful effect of boosting all Ancient Dragon Cult incantations and weapon skills by 2% per armor piece equipped for a total of 8% boost with the full set. And Ancient Dragon Cult means that this applies to pretty much every lightning incantation in the game and a good few of the lightning weapon skills as well. So if your build is based around lightning as far as lightning incantations or Ancient Dragon Cult skills, this armor set is just a straight up damage gain for every part of your set, which is really genuinely cool, as that's just a whole school of incantation being boosted by this awesome looking armor set. To get this for yourself then, it is in the Darklight Catacombs, which are at the bottom section of the same area that the mausoleum was in from the last entry. To get here, simply drop down the same gravestones that I showed you before beside the waterfall, but drop down one level even further and follow the path to the end of the area on the east. Once inside, this place is pretty massive and it's not a guaranteed find along the way, so I will just let the path play out so you can see where to grab it for yourself. And that just about does it for today then, everyone. Just 5 exceptionally visually cool armor sets, or I guess 4 sets and a giant jar helmet that also have a genuine power boosting effect depending on your build. Some of them are definitely more power boosting than others, but all of these are relevant for one reason or another, and the specific combination of the Rakshasa armor with the Fire Knight helmet is pretty much just the default standard catch-all buff armor now. Of course, there are builds where there are things that just have better bonuses for you, but for any build that doesn't have specifically helpful armor bonuses, that's now just sort of the default meta set, really. I hope you've all enjoyed this then, and hopefully you enjoy using this armor for yourself too if you go out and grab it. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.